everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy Wednesday. My name is Christian Barnes. I am the founder and lead financial coach of Do Better Financial, and welcome back to another Weeconomy Wednesday. I hope you've had a wonderful week since we last saw each other. I enjoyed my weekend, not doing a whole heck of a lot. That's always nice. So today, similar to last week, we're going to have a little bit of a split presentation. So we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can improve your Weeconomy first, and then we're also going to have a little bit of a stimulus package update second. So I'm going to be real, okay? I am a change avoider and lamenter. Any hint of change makes me dig my heels in and cling for dear life to whatever the winds of change is trying to whip away from me. And I know I'm not alone, right? My mantra, for those of you who have seen Sister Act, is
we don't want no new way.
Everywhere we look, people are mourning the loss of normalcy, whether that's in grocery shopping, work, school, and everything else, right? And in times like these, I personally have a tendency to cling to any and every fiber of my old life, even if it wasn't serving me well, or I intended to change it in the first place. So the thing about this is that doesn't actually make the changes stop happening. They keep coming, and it doesn't make me feel any better, right? I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle because I am, and that's a waste of mental energy. And as I talked about last week, we don't have mental energy to waste. We need all of our mental capacity so that we can fuel creative problem solving while we're dealing with all of these changes, right? So with that in mind, I just wanted to present to you some opportunities for adaptation, or rather 5 ways that you can shift your normal so that you can ultimately make your life better in the long run. I know a lot of people's finances have been adversely impacted by the virus, but there are also a lot of people that this is not the case for. So as you're financially capable and emotionally able, put these suggestions into practice, and it's going to help you shift your normal. Why? Because resistance is futile. All right, so number 1, get your financial house in order. I am a financial coach. You knew this was coming. But there are 3 parts to this one. The first one is to do a cash flow plan for the house, right? We went over this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how to do some bare bones cash flow planning or budgeting. Just having everything on a list allows you to see your negotiables, your non-negotiables, what has to get paid, what's optional, right? How much can we move around from here to there? And it gives you the place to start when you encounter an emergency. So as I discussed a couple of weeks ago for my husband and I, when we started with our budget, we were able to just yank the things off of there that we already knew were coming, that were non-negotiable, the rent and paying the IRS and stuff like that. There are a lot of other things, but those are the 2 that came to mind right away. Those things were non-negotiable. They were going to get done as long as we had enough money to do them, right? And then you could see the other stuff that was superfluous or was extraneous, extra. I'm feeling all thesaurusy today. So you could see all of those things as well. So all the million subscriptions we have for different services that we rarely use, the Audibles and the Pandoras and all of the stuff like that, right? The other thing you want to do is you want to start saving for emergencies. So once you've done this cash flow plan, you'll see where you have space, or you will make space. That's a discussion for another day. You will make space to save for emergencies, because when, not if, but when they happen, hello COVID-19, job loss, all sorts of strange stuff that can happen, from having an illness to having a car accident to having having to replace all the plumbing in your house. That story's still coming. Emergencies are going to come. So having savings in place will allow you to weather those and be less concerned about your finances when you're already dealing with another sort of emergency. Last but not least, when you're getting your financial house in order, specifically right now, is get life insurance. This is not new. People have been preaching that you need life insurance all the time, but we're realizing more and more the fact that being young does not exempt you from needing to have life insurance in place. We've seen countless countless heartbreaking stories about families who can't afford to bury their loved ones, families who have lost, young moms, young dads, and they just weren't expecting this. And I can't say if those specific people that I have seen stories about didn't have insurance, but I have seen some, a lot of GoFundMe's and fish plate dinners because they don't have life insurance. So get that stuff in place. It doesn't have to be expensive. Even if you only have $10,000 or $15,000 worth of life insurance, that's enough to bury you. And frequently that's what the fish plates are about, right? If you have a family though, go ahead and get a decent amount of life insurance so your family can be taken care of when you're gone instead of wondering what they gonna do, okay? Next thing you need to remember when it comes to insurance is that having insurance through your job is great. It's awesome, but think of it as a supplement, because as we can see, there are no truly secure jobs around here, and if you lose your job, you frequently will also pretty much always lose that life insurance unless you can pay to keep it. Now my husband's been furloughed, so I believe he had the option to keep his life insurance, but it reminded us that he needs some separate so that if they don't rehire him or he gets another job and they happen not to offer it, we need to make sure he's covered as well. So that's number one. Get your financial house in order. Number two, try a less meat or a meatless meal. I'm sure you have seen over the last couple of days all of the publications about the meat processing plants that have been closed across the United States. I think the biggest one was a pork processing plant, but there was another one that was also poultry. And so obviously because of this, there will probably be less availability of those products on the shelves. Now, clearly I'm a vegetarian. This doesn't really bother me. My husband, however, does eat meat, and so does most of my family and most of humanity. But I want to suggest, not because I'm a vegetarian, but because this is the new reality, right? We're talking about shifting our normal, that instead of lamenting it, talking about how horrible it is only, right? You can lament it. I'm not saying you can't grieve your changes. But instead of only doing that, why don't we get in front of it and shift how we go about this? So there was a message that I got and somebody was suggesting that everybody go stock up. And I was like, what if we decided that instead of stocking up, because this is going to run low, right? It's going to run out / run low. That's just the nature of what it is. You shut down some of the largest plants in the nation, you're going to have less meat available in any given meat case. Meat department, excuse me, that was my Kroger coming out, meat department in a grocery store, okay? There's going to be less. But maybe instead of thinking, oh man, how can I stock up? We started thinking, well, I'm going to use less, right? Because if we all use a little bit less, we can probably stretch it and everybody can get some instead of a lot of people having a lot and a lot of people having none. Church and Acts, anyone? Right? So, if you are somebody who does consume meat, start thinking about ways that you can stretch that particular protein, right? So instead of having just a hunk, a piece of chicken or a pork chop, figuring out meals where you can make that into something like pork fried rice, so you can use less of the meat and you can mix it in with vegetables and rice and make a larger meal that goes further. Instead of having one little piece of pork per person, you might be able to use one for the entire family and still be full and add other protein sources like tofu if that's something that you like, or something like chickpeas. I'm a huge fan of those. They do not taste like meat. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you they taste like meat, but you can make them taste good, and I think that's more important. Personal diatribe from a vegetarian, okay? So let's think about that, doing something proactive, and also considering alternatives. Like I said, using a little bit of meat and then supplementing it with an alternative protein like a tofu, like a bean, to stretch the meals out, and also just considering a meatless meal. One of my favorite meals as a kid was a pot. I ate the whole thing of macaroni and cheese. Now, is that the most balanced meal? No. Am I suggesting it? No. But thinking about, there are meals that we have always eaten and in due course just of growing up that didn't have meat and we didn't die, right? So actively now starting to search for recipes that look good and interesting to you that you can make that don't require, some sort of meat. These are suggestions. You don't have to do it for every day, but eventually you're probably going to have to do some of this anyway because there's going to be less of it available. So let's start planning for it now, okay? Number 3. This one is probably going to be the most uncomfortable. And that is get a bidet. Okay, so I personally was uncomfortable with these for a while. I thought they were kind of weird and I didn't really want to fool with it. And we went to Thailand, which was beautiful. My husband and I went to Thailand for our anniversary last year, and it was beautiful. And one of the hotels we stayed in was so fancy, and I think it was called 21 Pillars, and they had a bidet in the bathroom, and I just wanted to see what it was like. And it was not terrifying. It was way more efficient than using 18 pounds of toilet paper, and I felt actually clean. Right? I can use a couple of pieces of toilet paper to dab off the moisture and then be on my way instead of having to wad up half a roll. So I am suggesting this again. Go back to my caveat for if you have the money available. These can range in price from somewhere around like $30 or $40 to crazy prices like $2,000. I'm not talking about those. I'm thinking like, a max of like $150, $200, depending on what your budget looks like. Maybe you can get a $500 seat one that's got the warmers and plays the songs. That was the kind they had in Thailand. My husband would love to get that, but I don't know if that's in the budget. But that will reduce your toilet paper use. Another thing that has been struggling to keep on the shelves. I actually posted a very interesting article about that. If you're curious, just let me know in the comments and I'll resend it or repost it. It was a very interesting story about how there's not technically a shortage. We've just had a shift in consumption. But I digress. It will allow you to reduce your carbon footprint as far as toilet paper goes, and you'll also just generally need less, and you'll probably feel cleaner, okay? Next, number 4 is to prepare to work from home for extended periods of time, not just right now, but also in the future. Obviously, this is our first, as a global community, our first bout of dealing with a pandemic. And the go-to solution has been stay-at-home orders. Places like New Zealand have been able to make them super duper effective. The US is struggling for lots of reasons, but that seems to be the go-to way to slow the spread and flatten the curve, right? The same spiel that we've been getting a lot of. So in the spirit of that, if you are someone like myself who has a job that is based on a computer that can pretty much be done from anywhere, if you have reliable internet and you have a comfortable place to work, you'll be able to be more productive than if you're, hunched over your dining room table or trying to sit on the couch close to the internet because your internet's trash. My husband spent a lot of time actually making our internet better in the office because it was super far away from the modem. Neither here nor there. Get your office set up so that it can be effective for you if and when something like this happens again. I've posted some stuff about this before, but the last pandemic we had was the flu pandemic of 1918, I believe, and the first round killed about 20 to 50,000 people. The second round is when you start hitting the millions, right? It came back later that same year. So we need to remind ourselves that while we hope this ends soon, there's a good chance it'll be back, okay? So with that in mind, prepare to work from home. So get yourself a good desk, a nice chair, things like that. If you didn't originally have money to do something like this, I know that this can be an expensive venture. If you haven't gotten your stimulus check, we're going to talk about in a little bit, that's a good option, okay? That's a good option for something to utilize that money for. And even if you have gotten your stimulus check already, put it in that budget we talked about in number 1, okay? Last but not least is hone your personal care skills, your hair, nails, skin, so on and so forth. Obviously, we're not always going to be separated from our favorite barbers, stylists, nail technicians, so on and so forth. But having a basic set of skills will allow you to take care of things yourself in any sort of emergency, whether it's this kind of, we really didn't know it was coming kind of emergency and it's worldwide, or whether it's a financial emergency and you've been laid off, or whether it's just a time crunch and you need to fix something right quick. Like the ability to take care of yourself and have the tools to do so is very valuable. So for me, as I mentioned last week, and we've got new colors this week. Yep, I was feeling fancy, wanted to use my new colors again. I've gotten into doing my own nails. I've done my own hair for a while because I'm cheap. My husband is pretty much bald, so he just shaves his head every once in a while. So, you know, obviously it's not for us. It's a skill set that we've built up over time. This is a great time to build up your skill set, right? Get those skills under your belt. Learn how to do those things for yourself so that in case of emergency, you are not in a position where you are helpless, okay? So those are my 5 things. You want to get your financial house in order, which means do a household cash flow plan, save money, and get life insurance away from the job. Number 2 is try a less meat or meatless meal so that you can be proactive on that. Get a bidet. Try it, guys. I promise you it's not that bad. It's actually pretty great. Get a bidet, prepare to work from home, and hone your personal care skills. So those are the 5 ways that you can start to shift your normal on purpose instead of feeling like you're being dragged, because that's no fun. All right. So next we're going to get into our stimulus package updates. First up is stimulus payments, because I'm sure that's all that anybody really cares about right now. The IRS made an update to their website this past weekend on Friday and Saturday, which seems to have fixed a lot of the bugs and glitches. And it's also caused a lot of people to finally have payment dates available in the Get My Payment tool. So from what I understand, the initial payments that went out about a week ago went to people who had filed their taxes electronically for 2019 specifically, and had asked for gotten their refund direct deposited to their account. Those seemed to be the majority of the first set that got their money. I actually went and checked on the Get My Payment tool on Monday, and it says that we should get our payment on tomorrow. Now, just to put that in perspective, when they opened the Get My Payment tool 2 weeks ago, I immediately went in and put in our direct deposit information. And up until Monday, all it said was, you're going to get a payment. It's going to go to this account. We haven't scheduled it yet. After they did this update, it gave me a date. I've been looking around, and a lot of other people have started getting dates of either tomorrow or Friday as well. So you can start looking out for that. Hopefully the system after this big update that they did is going to be more robust and accurate on a regular basis. One thing that they have also done that they fixed is, we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you neither received a refund or owed money, previously you would get an error telling you had to put something else in the box. Now you can enter a 0. So if you didn't get any money and you didn't owe any money and you filed a return for 2019, when you go in there to try to update your direct deposit information, you will be able to put a 0 in that box. Caveat: if you're still unable to get a response after putting in a 0, make sure you didn't opt to have your refund applied to the next year's taxes. So let me give you an example. Say, for instance, you're somebody who in 2018, you made a certain amount of money and you were supposed to get a $1,000 refund. But obviously when you filed your 2018 taxes, it was already April of 2019, and you were like, man, I'm making a whole bunch more money. Go ahead and just apply this to my 2019 taxes instead. You technically got a refund for 2018. You just didn't receive it because you told them hold on to it and, put it on my books, basically. So if that was you, you need to go back to that return and look and see how much it was that you told them to apply to your next return, okay? If your last filing was in 2018, you should now be able to access the tool and update your direct deposit information. So I had mentioned that if your last thing that you filed was 2018, make sure you use that information. Apparently, they hadn't even loaded the 2018 tax information into that database. So if the last taxes you filed was 2018 and you are eligible, try to get in now. It should let you use your 2018 information, make sure all that stuff is still correct, to update your direct deposit. This is the one that you perk your ears up, listen real good. I'm going to read it so I make sure I don't get it wrong. If you successfully enter your banking info before noon on a Tuesday, so that would have been yesterday, your payment date will be available beginning the following Saturday. If you miss the deadline, you have to wait another week. So let's do an example. If I had put my direct deposit data in this Monday, by this Saturday, I should have a date for when I would get my check if it hadn't already been scheduled. if you were to go do it right now today on a Wednesday, you would not be able to see it this Saturday. You'd have to wait till the next Saturday. So a full week and a half, right? Before you'd see it. That's not to say you shouldn't go update it. Just be aware there's almost no point in checking until not this Saturday, which I think is like May 2nd. You probably wouldn't need to check until May 9th. If my dates are wrong, I apologize. Somebody put the right date in the comment, okay? So, go ahead in your banking information. If you get it done before noon on Tuesday, then you'll be able to see by that Saturday, when they schedule your payment. If your payment has already been processed before you can get your direct deposit stuff in there, you're going to receive a check within 14 days, okay? I know that's a really long time, but if it says that they've already sent you a check, there's really nothing you can do about it. Just try your best to make sure to track down where it went. So for instance, if you had your return, your last return, whatever it was, has a different address than where you currently live, and that other address is where somebody else now lives, if you have any way to get in contact with them, that would be great, because they're going to end up with your check. Hopefully they don't cash it. Hopefully they don't send it back. I actually saw one lady who posted a lady's full name. She put a picture of it on Facebook and covered up her address and her personal information because she was pretty sure she had received her paper check. So I know some people might be doing things like that. They may know you, but if you are getting one, be aware when you log in. If it tells you that your payment already went out, that check has been mailed, it could take up to 2 weeks, okay? Next, for Social Security people with Social Security retirement, survivor and disability non-filers, you should see your impact payments either, it says on the 29th, which is today. I'm going to say between today and the end of this week, okay? But it says you should see your payments on the 29th. So these are people who have paid into the Social Security system, or people who are survivor or disability non-filers. That means you did not file taxes, okay? If you are a SSI non-filer, which means that you are means tested, that you are below a certain income level, or you get veterans benefits, you should start seeing your payments in early May. Now, there's a little bit of an update for those people who did not file taxes, SSI or VA benefits recipients who did not file taxes in 2018 or 19. You need to register your dependents only, on the non-filers tool by May 5th. I know it's short notice. You need to register on the non-filers tool by May 5th in order to receive your $500 per child under 17. If you don't do that by May 5th, if you don't log into the IRS website and go to the non-filers tool and input your kids, you won't get that money until 2021. But in order to get it, you would then have to file your 2020 taxes, right? Even if you're not federally required to file 2020 taxes because of the level of your income, if you wanted to get that money for the kids, you would have to file taxes in 2020. The same thing happened for Social Security retirement people and railroad benefit people. Last week, they gave us pretty much like zero notice. I posted it the second I saw it, and I think they announced it like 3 days before. There are currently members of Congress who are requesting extensions on this requirement because of the short notice, and also because of a lack of internet access amongst certain populations, primarily populations of color, especially if you live in a neighborhood where normally you would access the internet or a computer in a library. Libraries are closed. Municipal centers are closed. Like VA halls, a lot of them are closed. They're starting to open, but the likelihood that you would be able to get this done in time, if you don't have Wi-Fi on your phone or internet in your house, it's very cumbersome, and it seems like an undue burden for them. So Congress is working on that. I'll let you know if they make any decisions as far as reopening that so that people who are receiving these benefits can update their dependent information. Next, we've got business. So the SBA technically started accepting PPP applications on Monday, but the server was completely overloaded and kept crashing. So most banks had a very, very difficult time inputting data in spite of having all their documentation ready. I read stories about some banks that, they had over 400 applications ready to go, and people sitting at computers ready to type. And after 5 hours, they had input like 5 because it would crash. They would type in all the information and it would crash and they would have to start over. In spite of that, the SBA says that they have already approved, as of yesterday, $55 billion worth of loans, $55 billion worth of loans, which is over 500,000 individual loans, right? So 500,000 separate small businesses have received or been approved for these loans as of yesterday, which was Tuesday. So in 2 days, they're getting after it, similar to last time. Of course, this funding will eventually run dry, but there has been a lot of talk on social media about the companies who are very large companies that received a lot of this money. And according to the Treasury Secretary, Mnuchin, it's one of those, companies that received over $2 million will be audited, which has prompted a lot of them to return the money automatically. But he's told them that they have until May 7th to return the money. Any funds, these funds were not intended for businesses with access to equity markets, so anybody that's publicly traded, so the Ruth Chris and the Shake Shacks, it was not supposed to go to those people. They utilized it because technically the words of the legislation didn't exclude them exactly, so they utilized it, right? But it wasn't intended for them, so he's encouraged them to return it, and if they don't, they're going to be audited. So far, $160 million has been returned. Some of those businesses are Taco Cabana, the Los Angeles Lakers, Nathan's, the Hot Dog People, Potbelly's, Ruth Chris, and Shake Shack. There is a full list in the description of all of those companies that have begun the process of returning the funds. That said, there's $160 million now available for small businesses that actually need it. There are some discussions about changing the forgiveness rules to further limit who's eligible if another round of funding is considered. But there's also been some talk about, as I mentioned, this stuff was fuzzy. And because it's fuzzy, that means that they could change the rules in the middle of the game. So there's now discussions that even if a company stays within the guidelines of these rules, they still might not have their money, their loan forgiven if they were not part of the people intended to receive these funds. And how they come up with those numbers is going to be interesting. It sounded like they were going to do something like comparing your income in 2020 and 2019. But again, I told you guys when I first covered this, please read the fine print. And if there wasn't enough fine print, prepare to owe something. And that's where we're starting to head. So I'll keep you updated on that in the future. Two more things. Housing. Any Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed loans, mortgages. If you skip the mortgage payment, you are allowed to skip mortgage payments for up to 6 months, right? And the intention of the legislation that Congress passed was that those payments would be tacked on to the end of your of the life of your mortgage. So if you had a 30-year mortgage, it would just be 30 years and 6 months, and they wouldn't penalize you for skipping 6 months. Apparently, some banks and lenders, loan servicers, have been confusing people. And because of that, they're telling them things like you're going to have a balloon payment. And it seems like they're just trying to scare borrowers so that they don't have their cash flow interrupted. But if you are a person who has a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan, go ahead and call your congressman, right? Encourage them to make this super crystal clear so that there is no way for a loophole, so that they can stop bullying people who are already in financial dire straits. Last but not least is Harris County. If you're self-employed, contract, or gig worker and you're still having trouble applying for unemployment, there's an article for exactly what you need to do from the Houston Chronicle below. You're going to select reduced hours for your job separation, select COVID-19 on the disaster impact, and you need to send them your 2019 Schedule C, F, or SE by fax, email, or mail. If you prefer to fax it but don't have a fax machine, there's a couple of things, one called MyFax and another called eFax, where you can actually take a picture of something and send a fax from your cell phone, which is really great, and it'll allow you to be able to get them that information without wondering if it got lost in the email hole, right? Last but not least, tolls are no longer being waived. I'm very sad about this, But all that being said, if you're going to ride on the toll road, know that they are now going to be charging you. Please stay safe. Please use your best judgment as you're going out. If you need any help working on those 5 steps, particularly number 1, to shift your new normal, and you're looking for some help in getting your financial house in order, you can you can request a free consultation on dobetterfinancial.com/free. Again, that's free. There's no cost. It's 15 minutes, and we'll walk through exactly where you are, where you're trying to go, and how to make a bridge to get you between those 2 points. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Again, this is Weeconomy Wednesday. My name is Christian Barnes, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.